This is a program about museum collections and their treasures. Who represents modern Ukrainian art? What are the traditions and experiments of artists from different art schools? What forms of representation and styles should young artists choose? And how do modern Ukrainian painters integrate into the global art world? It's fine art with the capital letter A. It asserts itself, finds all these components, echoes in itself, uses all the opportunities to represent people's feelings and characters. The imperative of painting is what interests me. In the Museum of Modern Art of Ukraine, the works of painters of different art schools and movements are stored. These are works by different authors from different regions of Ukraine dating from the 1930s until the present day. The best paintings of prominent Ukrainian artists were selected for a creative art presentation.
Каждый из художников по-своему интересен, фамилии у всех на слуху.
Each artist is interesting in their own way. Their names are familiar to the public. It will also be interesting for these who are studying art professionally and for the lovers of beauty who visit our museum.
Прекрасного, который просто приходит к нам в музей.
The number of original and creative painters isn't in decline in Ukraine. Their works are admired by art critics, art exhibitions, and on the pages of unique art catalogs. A fundamental museum work, The White Album, is one of such publications.
В этом альбоме представлен широченный спектр.
A wide range of works is presented in this album. Thus, all art schools of Ukraine, Lviv, Kiev, Kharkiv, Transcarpathian and Crimean ones are presented. It fills the gaps to some extent. A number of the works have been published before, and now we're filling those gaps. We present the works by not very well-known artists or unusual works by famous painters.
Неизвестных художников, либо известных художников, но непривычные работы.
Дело в том, что информация...
The thing is, this album contains a lot of information. There are almost 400 pages, and there are many artists. Each of them has found their place on the pages of our album. We want to promote our artists, our collection, and to show our heritage not only in Ukraine, but also abroad.
Не только в Украине показать наше достояние, но и за рубежом.
So, early and current works by famous Ukrainian artists of different generations are displayed. Each of them has their individual style and vision of the world. The museum collection with exclusive early works of the Ukrainian artists provides an opportunity to see how their creative activity has been developed over time, says Irina Alexeyeva. And this artist at that time positioned him or herself in some way. Now, he may work differently, but we have some of his early paintings, and it's interesting to compare. What interests modern visitors of exhibitions? What do they want to see on canvases, and what do they admire? Museum workers know it best. They can initiate a feedback between the audience and the author, which gives a path to creative activity.
Мы все-таки музей. Мы как бы и работаем.
We are a museum. We select the works which will be interesting forever. This distinguishing feature is very important, and the museum is into this work. In today's exposition, all the artists are familiar to the public. That's why I think it will be interesting for them.
Уже это будет интересно.
Мы можем увидеть.
We can see artists of different generations. Here's, for example, a painter of the older generation, representative of underground art, Alexander Pavlov. Art critics say that currently artists of several schools of paintings are fruitfully working in Ukraine. The display, which includes completely different works, excites great public interest. The painters embody their creative ideas and fantasies, applying individual techniques and new forms of painting.
Несмотря на то, что вот мы условно всех разносим по школам.
Despite the fact that we conditionally divide all of them in accordance with their schools, Kiev, Lviv, and so on, it's a hallmark of our modern Ukraine.
Можно назвать художников киевских.
Today we can name Kiev's significant artists whose works are often displayed. For example, Alena Prudvalova, Alexei Maluk, and Alena Rizhik.
То есть это поколение.
There are the generation of painters of non-figurative art. Their works are displayed here. In the next hall, there are also interesting authors. For example, the Transcarpathian painter Vyacheslav Prihodko.
Интересные
Transcarpathian art is often associated with landscapes, but here we can see the roofs of Mukachevo, which is some kind of cubism. The Lviv School of Painting is impressive by its intelligence and poetry. The graphic artist Bogdan Soroka has created a lot of works about the mythology of Ukraine. Philosophical paintings by Lubomir Medved with encrypted symbols are also on display. One can enjoy the works by an underground art representative, surrealist Oleg Minko, and original graphic artist Halina Zhigulska. Of course, there are also works by one of the biggest representatives of Lviv nonconformism, a mysterious artist named Alexander Aksinin. He was called the Lviv Dürer. His graphics is finally worked out. He's one of a kind. At the exhibition, a group of Odessa underground painters stands out. Each of them shows non-figurative art features in their works in their own way. Thus, Volodymyr Budnikov, a student of Tetiana Yablonska, is rightfully considered to be the founder of the modern neo-Baroque style in art. He has very interesting non-figurative compositions. Strelnikov is a representative of Odessa underground art. They are contemporaries with Voloshin. And flamboyant Alexander Voitbud, the father of Odessa trance avant-garde, who is more known for his installations and performances, has appeared in a completely different genre at the exhibition. Yevhen Rachmanin is also a representative of Odessa underground art. He creates very rich images by minimal means. Lucien Delphin is a representative of Odessa underground art as well. He lives abroad now. His works are close to collage technique, to some kind of applique. He's like all Odessa representatives. They did everything with humor and epotage. Lucien Delphin uses very rich colors. According to Katerina, Ukrainian artists have always experimented, even in the epoch of the stagnant of 1980s. At that time, new, unusual techniques in painting were rarely used and the socialist realism style dominated. A work by Serhiy Hata is a good example. The painting was drawn with a pencil, and it imitates photographs of those years. For example, in the US there was such a style, hyperrealism, and we started working in it approximately in the 1970s, 1980s. But this style wasn't supported in the USSR, as hyperrealism wasn't socialist realism. The album also includes works by Ukrainian authors who started creating their masterpieces in the Soviet era, but then emigrated in different periods of time. Their paintings are now in the museums and private collections of EU countries and the US, but many of these works remained in Ukraine. They are often displayed and published in catalogs. Edward Belsky doesn't live in Ukraine now. He immigrated. He is an artist with his unique style. He started working in the Soviet time. However, as you can see, there is nothing Soviet in his works. Serhiy Vasilyev is also a representative of hyperrealism. He, like Serhiy Hata, also lives abroad. Because of persecutions, they had to change their place of residence. This painting was created and playing air in Crimea in the early 2000s. The way Voivod and the author himself, Serhiy Vasilyev, are depicted on it. Valeria Trubina now lives in the US. She is a representative of art of the 1980s, 1990s. The artist Yevhen Hordets immigrated to the US. He painted beautifully. He depicted incredible landscapes, for example, Kiev in the 1980s. In the US, his style has transformed into colorful and fantasy images. The exhibition and the album involve the works made by a number of famous artists. Masterpieces by the legendary Ivan Marchuk can be easily recognized among the works of other artists. He creates his paintings using his unique technique, plianotenism. You can see all those fine lines here, the figure seems to be woven on threads. Again, the music stopped, the sounds stop, or they will be heard again. Many Ukrainian painters are popular abroad. The painter and graphic artist Mykola Zhuravel is a vivid representative of this group. His Bee-Yard project was successfully displayed in the US and the Venice Biennale. In my opinion, his painting Sunflowers, exhibited in the museum, is an unusual work. It was created in relatively bright colors and is unexpectedly figurative. This work is optimistic and beautiful and not very typical of his style. He loves working with gesso, the color palette of which is more subdued.
Он по цветовой гамме он более такой мягкий и плавный, а здесь вот прямо такой вот именно подсолнухи, как солнечный взрыв.
You can also enjoy the emotional space created by Anatoly Krivolov. The influence of folk art is felt in one of his canvases with a bright landscape. Krivolov is one of the most successful painters. His work are sold at international auctions. He is known and appreciated all over the world.
Вот он очень интересный колорист.
He is a very interesting colorist painter. And now, as I understand it, such unusual color spots and abstract art are highly appreciated in the West. Petrol Lebedinets mainly works in the non-figurative technique, and here a painting non-typical for his style is exhibited. He used not only a brush to create it, but also, as I understand it, different tools he had at hand. Yulia Lazarevska is one of the brightest representatives of contemporary Ukrainian art. She successfully works in different art spheres. Her main job is film directing. She shot a lot of films about the representatives of our culture. What is more, she is also into ceramics, sculptural arts, and painting. Visitors of the exhibition will surely notice this canvas by Vasil Tsaholov, among other contemporary artworks. Here we can see a very expressive look. It's from the Fear Has Big Eyes series. This is a very beautiful painting. Through the search of unusual techniques, new forms and art decisions, vivid works of contemporary Ukrainian artists are born. Well, those artists who started in the 1990s, then restrictions were removed, began to freely explore themselves. An opportunity to travel abroad appeared. And, by the way, the generation of 50-year-olds is very interesting, as in their works there is a combination of something that is ours and something they saw abroad. Along with refined tonal paintings, there are works with complex dimensions of plastic content by Oleg Tistol. His paintings were presented at international auctions, biennales, and are now stored in Ukrainian museums as well as museums in Europe and the US.
Oleg
Tistol's works belong to contemporary art. Here is his self-portrait. Epotage and folk art are combined here. Boris Mikolov is an artist-philosopher. I would call him that. He has a lot of work on mythological and philosophical topics. This one is called Dedicated to Nico Pirosmani. And we may think, who is Pirosmani here? Did he stay behind the scenes? Or is it just the atmosphere of the Georgia of Primasani time? Cherysshevsky is also an interesting artist, as all of his works have a double meaning. That is, he also likes asking riddles. Sculptural compositions stand out in the exhibition. Sculptors have shown eternal and elusive space, the energy of plastic images in their works, making their creative ideas visible for the audience. The sculptor Yevhen Prokopov now successfully works in the US. Here is his work Adam and Eve. By the way, there are bigger Adam and Eve paintings in the museum collection. They have a similar composition. Sculptural works by Roman Petruk, Yaroslav Motika, Mykola Malishko are also examples of the modern approach to the practice of fine art. They convey authentic codes which are close to every Ukrainian and the author's philosophy of reframing. The current situation is interesting because a number of trends and movements exist simultaneously. What is more, some of them are popular only in our country while others are getting well known in the world. And, as it seems to me, it's much more interesting than the development of all artists in the same way. Well, the contemporary Ukrainian art presented at art exhibition is rich and diverse. It's in constant search and it's full of discoveries. It constantly changes styles and techniques. That's why it becomes more vivid and attractive. Art critic Katerina Tarchevska believes all that gives hope that the next generation will develop and new names will appear in Ukrainian art. In fact, art editions of the museum, such as the White Album, are made for this purpose. The best works have been selected for the White Album, which is planned for distribution to libraries and museums not only in Ukraine, but also abroad, so that the whole world will have a chance to discover our art.